Hey, and welcome back to another Revit video. In this video, we're going to look at detailing, specifically section details, and more specifically, tagging, because let's be honest, you have to tag everything in your details, whether it's a section, elevation, anything. You've got to have notes, you've got to have tags, you got to have whatever you want to call it, because it can be different things. So if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out quite a lot. So I will say this is gonna be a series of like detailing videos, and we'll have probably 2 or 3 specifically on tagging and noting on. We're gonna look at a section detail and different ways to do that. So this first video, we'll look at technically one way, but actually 2 different ways of tagging and noting a section detail. Okay, so get into it now. I have just a wall and a door, and what we're going to be looking at and detailing ultimately is a header, a door header. Okay, so I've got a section here. Let's go to this wall section, and so it's going to be right here basically. So all I need to do is go to View, call out, and let's go ahead and draw this. Now, I am going to step back and actually detail it, so you don't have to watch me detail it, because while the detailing itself is very important, that's not really what we care about, because at the end of the day, this video in particular is about the noting and the tagging of all the different detail components, 2D elements that go into actually creating this section detail. So I'm going to detail this out, and then we can start making tags. So I will see you in just a second. Okay, so now I have this all detailed out, and it looks a little messy, and that's because we need to, in some way hide the model, because what I have on top is just a bunch of detail components and basically 2D elements that go into this section detail. So this is not a debate I want to have in this video, because we could go on, and nor do I want to, but in this display model, it's currently set to normal and will be, and that just means I can see the actual 3D model. Now, I don't care about that because, again, my section detail has all of these components that I've taken the time to put over the top. In this case, I have a different door frame and all this kind of stuff, like things like that. So I can decide to halftone it if I still want to see the model, and in a lot of cases, I might want to do that. But for this and the sake of this video, let's do not display our model. So this looks much cleaner. Like I actually can understand what's going on. So just for your knowledge, this is an interior door, into like some sort of a hotel room or a unit or something like that. Larger hollow metal door, basic solid core wood door itself. And so here we go. We have it. And so what are the next steps? Maybe you have some of these detail components, maybe you don't. Not necessarily worried about that, but just know that these are not just like 2D lines and filled regions. There are a couple of those, but most of these are detail components, things that have been built over time. Okay, so we are looking at tagging specifically. And so tagging, or let's call it noting, however you want to call it, involves text in some way. Like we have to deal with text. And so the first way we could do this, and by first way, this is not the real kind of point of this video, but I do want to tell you, obviously, this is one way you can do it. I can come up here to text, I can add a leader, and I can point to this door and type door as scheduled. Okay, and we obviously know what text is. It is as simple as that. It is text. I can come in here, I can edit this, I can do what I need to, because at the end of the day, I may not have this note right. I may not have it located correctly. I might need to change the detail, things like that. And with that in mind, the text will allow me to change that. Now, where does this fall short? Well, it falls short in the fact that this, in of itself, is just text and is not smart at all. It has no capabilities of, let's say, updating project-wide. It has no updates of having a single place to update it. It has no capability of me being able to put this tag somewhere else really quickly, other than copy and pasting, which it works, but how many times am I going to have a door in a detail? Well, every detail that involves a door, but every other detail doesn't. So this node becomes a one-off node. And so why? Okay, so with text being the first, and just knowing that I'm going to keep saying text, but when I say text is the first way of actually noting, in this case, a section detail, by that I mean going to the annotate tab and then using text, just plain text, nothing special at all. And why is that? And because it's not smart, and we don't care about that. We don't want to use this. Now, I will say I've worked a number of places where this is the standard. And don't ask me why, because it seems like a giant waste of time, because what do? Where do we spend most of our time? Well, that is detailing. That is this. That is the 2D elements, which I wish were not the case. That's, again, another debate, 3D versus 2D, whatever. But when it comes to having to do this, because we know we have to do it, what's the most efficient way? What's the smartest way to do it? And, well, this is efficient only to the point to where I'm typing. And if I have one detail, sure, just type it out. Don't worry about it. Don't put in the extra effort and time it takes to make a full system. But if you have tons of details, and tons, I would say, is 10 or more, it's probably worth doing something like this, because there will be a lot of similarities. So what are we actually talking about? Well, we're talking about tags. And in this case, may not be anything special or new to you, but it is the closest thing that we can call to a smart tag, and when it comes to sections and details in Revit. So there's a lot of different tags here, and this video is not a video on all the different types of tags. It is about another, and let's say the smarter way of sections and detailing and creating the text that we need that is not just plain text. So I can come to tag by category. And with this, I have a lot of different things here. In this case, I've made some tags, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to choose an element that I know that does not have anything associated to it. And we'll get to that in just a second after I place the tag. And that element will be this 2 layers of chipboard. So let's go ahead and place this. Now you can see by default, this tag wants to place just in the center or the end of the detail component, which I don't necessarily like. So the way around that is to go to leader and free end. And this is going to allow me to literally put the leader wherever I want freely. So let's say we want it here, looks good, and then I can drag it out, and we have to click twice. The first is where that, I guess you could call it an elbow that had a pivot, or it has a real turn, but regardless, that will work. So I click once, and you can see, yeah, where's the end of this going to go? Well, let's go ahead and attempt to line it up with the text. Unfortunately, the tags will not line up with text. You can see the compatibility just isn't there. And because they're different things, it sort of makes sense. So, okay, what is this? What are we looking at? Well, I have made this tag, and what this tag does is it pulls from elements and information, specifically text that we care about, from this physical detail component. So let's click on the detail component, and I'll show you some of the things here. Well, there's nothing, and in this case, being nothing, it makes sense as to why the question mark is here. And of course, that's totally why. So what I can do here is select this element. Again, everything that this tag pulls from is based on the element, and you know that because this tag, and specifically the question mark, is a particular parameter that I'll show you in a second, but it is blue. And it is blue because I have selected this element in Revit, and it is associated to that because I clicked it, and basically the GIP line, the 2 layers of GIP line, is the host for this tag, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and edit the type of this GIP line. And we can see here, okay, yeah, like we already saw, this is completely blank. So what do we care about? Well, in this case, because the way we want to organize our tags is by type, then that would be in the type comments, or really anywhere you want. But I'll show you, we'll go into the tag itself. This tag is based on the type comments. And again, this is pretty typical of detail component tags. I will open up the default as well. But if I come in here and I say, okay, 5/8 inch chipboard. Okay, great. I press OK, and boom, all of a sudden, this says 5/8 chipboard. But it is reporting the type comments, which is totally great. And so what happens if I come in here and I create similar, and I want to make another one of these? Well, if I hover over this element, it is the exact same tag because it's referring to the exact same thing. Now, if I come over here to this, it's the exact same element. I'm going to get the same tag, which is awesome. Now, here's the cool part. Well, I have obviously made a bunch of these detail components over time, and as I've made them, I have put together type comments associated to those detail components. All that means is that I can come in here and decide, all right, I need to tag this element. In this case, oh, look, it's non-structural metal frame. It's a ceiling, sure. And then I can come over here and I can do the exact same thing. Oh, this is, some sort of a rated wall. It is a cold form metal frame. That's exactly what I need. And in this case, this is just a basic hollow metal frame. like you can start to see why this is really important and the power that you have with tagging this way, as opposed to doing basic text. Now, for the unfortunate part is, unless I make some sort of a detail component or some sort of annotation, something, this door being just made up of 3 detail lines is not going to pull from anything. And I know that because I can't edit a type. There's no type associated to just a detail line, which means I can't use the detail component tag. So hence why I have text for this particular element. Now, I don't know. Yeah, what we can do is, and maybe we'll go ahead and do this. I can go ahead and make a region, and let's literally draw right over this door. I'll attempt to match the thickness. That's probably pretty good. I'll do that. I'll send that to the back. Maybe because it is wood, we'll just call this wood. Great. That looks awesome. Now, what can I do at this point? Well, let's go ahead and delete these few lines. So I'm just left with the annotation. Now you notice I got rid of my basic dimension because it was associated to the lines. We can deal with that later. But looking at this now, I have the annotation, which is the door, but you'll notice this filled region has an edit type because it is more than just the line. So I can come in here and say, ooh, what do I want this to be? Well, this can be door as scheduled. Look at that. That's awesome. Now, what am I going to do next? Because guess what happens? The next time someone uses, or if this wood 1 is already tagged somewhere, this is suddenly going to populate everywhere as door as scheduled, which we might want, we might not want. So let's call it best practice. I would do something like this. I would delete that, but I would duplicate this and call this wood and then maybe underscore door. Clearly something like this. And then all I do is in the type comments here, let's do door as scheduled. Hey, and then I can press OK. And so now I have this type of this particular annotation or filled region, which is called wood doors, and the type comment is door scheduled. Great. And so this is text. I don't want text. Let's go ahead and create similar from this tag. And look, oh, this is exactly what I love to see, and why is this helpful? This is totally cool. We like seeing this. It's real easy to throw tags down, but it makes sense because I'm going to have, let's say, 100 plus details that are probably really important in a project of decent size. And a lot of them, or I will say, let's say most, if not all of them in a commercial project will have chipboard, and it's probably going to be a consistent size. The same with a lot of these, whether it's an exterior detail, you're going to have some sort of a sheathing, and likely you're not going to have 50 different types of sheathing on a project, maybe 1, 2, or 3 different types. That's not hard to achieve. And so that's totally great. One other thing I would do is, maybe I have a different type of chipboard, and in this case, it's just 5/8 inch. Obviously, I might have a 1/2 inch, so it's thinner or something like that, and so that would be a different type, things like that. That's really important. So don't be afraid to duplicate any of these detail components just to update the tag, because let's be honest, that's going to still save you time, because whenever someone chooses that specific thing, assuming it's renamed correctly, it's going to be real easy to populate throughout your project. Okay, great. That's totally why we'd want to do this. So I will say, that's great. This is probably not something completely new to you, but this is just a way of thinking about, detailing a project, because it can be so much easier to do it. Something I will say is that bad insulation, if you're using the actual insulation, which will be found in annotation and insulation, you can't tag that. And the unfortunate part is it applies the exact same way as just a detail line. I don't know why it is what it is, but because it's that way, it has no type. There's no type properties. It's just these instance parameters. And so, yeah, we have to go through and end up using text to call out this particular installation. I don't like it. I've done tons of searches over the years. The best workaround is to create a detail component that is line based and an array of just lines. And that means at that point, because it's a detail component, you can tag it. Now, is it worth doing that? I would say no. Just put a basic text note in there and move on with your day. Okay, so let's look at the tag. So I'm going to go ahead and find the out of the box tag, because we want to look at that and compare to what we're used to seeing. So let's go to annotations here at the top. And then all of these different tags here, we can see detail item tag. And I'm going to go ahead and open this. And just note, this is not the exact one that I'm using, but nonetheless, that's totally fine. This is where you probably start. And so it's just made up of these lines, which really don't matter. And I would say I don't like them. I don't want to have them. But this detail item tag, it's actually just a tag. It's not actually notes or anything like that. But we're going to change that. We're going to make it our own. So I can go ahead and edit this label, and we can see what this label is doing. Well, like I said, because it's simply tagging something, it's looking at type mark. And we don't care about that necessarily unless, again, you do. That's to duplicate the tag, save as, whatever, do that. But like I said before, what we really care about is type comments. That's awesome. And so with type comments, that means we're going to pull from the type comments of any sort of detail component, filled region, masking region, annotation, anything like that. And so that's awesome. That's what we want, and that's what we had in our note. Now, let's say you decide, well, I don't really want this type. I don't want it to be type-based. I want it to be instance-based. Well, if at that point, that's totally fine, first of all. At that point, you're sort of reverting back to the just using a basic text to fill it in, because every single time you have, let's say, a line of gypsum board, you're going to have to, in the instance properties of that particular detail component, you're going to have to type out exactly what you want there. Now, again, you can totally do that, but it's not something I necessarily want to do. Okay, if we wanted to do that, how would we do that? Well, I can come in here and just know that these are shared parameters. I can always make a new shared parameter that is instance-based. But you could also use comments. This is a great way to get away from shared parameters or making a new parameter in that regard, because comments itself is an instance parameter, and every element in Revit, including detail components and things that we care about for detailing, have comments as an instance parameter. Maybe some also have type comments, but in this case, they do have comments as an instance parameter. So you can totally do that. Now, just know this is how you make the tag that I was just using. And with that, I'm actually going to go back to the tag that I'm using, and we're going to edit that. And I want to show you specifically what I've done, because that is really important. So I'm going to come to the tag here and then edit family. Okay, and immediately, obviously this is a preview, but know that this is the tag itself, and this is all of the information that we want. So I'm simply going to come over here to label. I'm going to edit that, and we can see, hey, this looks very similar to what I just saw. And that is because not only am I using the type comments and pulling the type comments from all the detail components, but I have, let's call it an option of also adding in an instance parameter, because let me guess, there will be some times where you have a detail component that is the exact same in one detail as to it appearing in another detail, or even different places in the same detail. But you need to add something extra. You need to add additional information for this one specific place. Well, how would we do that? We can do it like this. Obviously, we take the type comments, which will be the same across all the types, but for that particular element, whether it's in a particular place in a detail or across your project, you have a comments here. And this basically option, it appears as an option because it has no value by default. If you look at any of comments, instance parameters of any element in Revit, unless you've typed something in there, there's nothing there. And so it's not going to report anything, therefore it won't display anything, which is totally great. That's what we want here. So how else am I formatting it? Well, you can decide, and I have done this before in the past. I have type comments, and I've got my sample here, which is just type comments. I've chosen to break this in the past, therefore adding an additional line before I get to any additional comment. And I don't like this necessarily, because that means if I add anything, I'm going to immediately have two lines. And maybe I don't need that. So in a sense, what I've done, and I've decided, well, maybe I want this on one line for now. It's totally fine. But I have the comments, and that is set up to have 0 additional spaces after the previous parameter, type parameters. And then in the prefix, I've added a comma and a space. And so that's kind of baked in to where as soon as that's going to activate, as soon as I have any sort of information in my actual comments field. And I've written additional comments there as the sample text. And so we can see, we can press OK, and I'm just going to load this back into the project because that's exactly what I want to do. Project 1, yep. Don't need to save this. I can overwrite this. That's great. And so you can see my option is right here. And so obviously door as scheduled, that's what we're used to seeing. All of this. So maybe, for instance, I want to come into the door and, I want to add, let's just call it a wood door underneath as like an instance parameter, because maybe I have a different door as scheduled and it's not wood, or maybe have a different wood door that's not actually wood, or things like that. So how would I do that? Well, again, the comments it's tied, that parameter is tied to the element itself. So if I want to look at the element that this tag is associated to, I can choose select host, or I can just simply click on it. That's obvious. So let's select host. And now I'm selecting the host. And now, like I said before, we have comments. And now we can literally type in anything we want. I'm going to get a comma after the as scheduled, and then a space in whatever I type into comments. So let's just literally type in wood door because it's a wood door. Boom, look at that. And so, like I said, if I have no information in the comments, I'm not even going to get that comma at the end. Now, if I were to have broken it and all of that, like added an additional line, I wouldn't want a floating comma, all of that. I could have done it another way to where I have the comma in the suffix of the type comments, as opposed to the prefix of just the basic comments. If I did that, then because I have a type comments value, basically every time I use the tag, I'd have this floating comma at the end, whether I have additional information after that or not. And so that's cool. Like, this is what I like to use a lot. And this is obviously the most simple way of beginning to make your detail components smart, because look at this. I can now take this anywhere I want and find another wood door or any other door, tag it door as scheduled. And obviously I can have multiple detail components or doors or annotations, whatever, as saying door as scheduled. And they could be metal in this case. And so you could literally say door as scheduled and then metal door in the comments. So lots of different options to do with that, because I can still use this exact same information. So I would highly recommend you do this yourself. It's very simple. You don't have to make any additional parameters. It's everything that's built into Revit. And so this is great. I love this because it really does allow me to take what I have made as detail components over time and just simply put in my text as type comments. And so guess what? What happens whenever, I have all of these different elements, and let's say, for example, I make the worst mistake possible and I misspell hollow. And let's say, for some reason, I have no idea how to spell holo, metal frame. Well, if I don't know how to spell it, and we get towards the end of the project and someone realizes, hey, this guy's a dummy, he can't spell hollow, it gets marked up. Well, if I'm using text and I have hollow metal frame in every single one of my door details, that's likely, it's very possible, depending on the project, then I'm going to have to go into every single detail and go into the text itself and then add that L. Whereas if I do this method and I use this method, again, this is the whole point of using this method, I can simply come in here, add my L, and then walk away. If this is used 5,000 times and across the whole project, that L is going to show up everywhere. It's now going to be spelled correctly because I am referring to this exact component that has the information tied in. It's all based on the type. So totally what you need to do. So let me know what you think of this kind of a tagging or noting system, because, this is unfortunately one of the biggest reasons why we spend so much time in Revit and on our projects, because we have to detail every little thing. And if you're writing text for all the notes, I'm so sorry, it's going to take so much longer too. So I highly recommend this method as a start. And so that will do it for this video. I would highly recommend that you look at other videos that have come out in this similar subject, because we will explore how to make this a bit smarter. We'll also look at keynotes to a degree. Obviously, we did not look at keynotes at all because that's a completely different type of way of organizing all this data, which I do definitely agree is very important. Now, something I've done before with this is, instead of having this be type comments, I can have this be a spec section, or I can include spec section. And in that case, if you wanted to do that, you simply add another parameter on top of this. And so you've got a spec section on top, and then that's it. Like, it's the exact same thing. You'd have two type parameters. So we will look at all of that and more in future videos when it comes to making smart details, because honestly, it's kind of hard to make it a lot smarter than this really easily in Revit, because let's be honest, you're going to have to make the detail components, and then you're going to have to make the tags or the text that are associated to them in one way or another. So how do we do that? Well, we can come up with better ways of organizing them and displaying them, and at least getting an idea of what's in our project and whether it's tagged or not, things like that. So we can explore all those in future videos. So please stick around for those. If you happen to learn something, which I hope you did, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. And again, I will see you in the next video where we look at some more detailing, things like that. But regardless, I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for watching.